Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here and 4Ks, and sometimes we focus on a single label like I'm going to do today. One of my favorite labels, because of the variety of things that they do, of course, is Kino Lorber. And we've got a variety of titles to talk about here. And so I will get into it in a moment, but it's a lot. And again, spanning many decades and genres, and that's very exciting to me as a film omnivore. I'm going to start in a weird place. I'm going to start with College Confidential. And this one is it's from a producer director called Albert Zugsmith. And Albert Zugsmith is somebody that I only really know because of Joe Dante. Because Joe Dante is a fan of certain of Zugsmith's productions. I mean, he's a producer and a director. I mean, his productions are fascinating. I mean, this is a guy who produced things like Touch of Evil, The Incredible Shrinking Man, Written on the Wind. I mean, look, you got Orson Welles, you've got Douglas Sirk. He produced Tarnished Angels, Female on the Beach. I'm actually a big fan of too, with Joan Crawford. But he also did things like High School Confidential, which is directed by Jack Arnold, who did, the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Incredible Shrinking Man and Tarantula. And anyway, Jack Arnold's a whole fascinating thing unto himself. But High School Confidential is a movie that I had seen because of the Cult Movies books and was fascinated by sort of its camp appeal, because there's the sort of idea of camp classics, which is something that I became familiar with when I started watching or reading about cult movies. And I still find them really entertaining, especially period beatnik adjacent, 60s stuff. This one is from 1960. It's like a Kinsey report on the campus when sociology professor Steve McIntyre, late-night legend Steve Allen, conducts a survey at Collins College about the mores and lifestyles of the younger generation. Some of the town's citizens are dismayed to learn that it includes a question about sex. And when reporter Betty Duquesne, Jane Meadows, receives an anonymous tip in a protest of Steve's corrupt study, an attraction grows between them while Mac ends up facing a lawful fight, bringing together a curious cast including boxer Rocky Marciano, country star Conway Twitty, newspaperman Walter Winchell, character actor Alicia Cook Jr., and beloved bombshell Mamie Van Doren. College Confidential puts sex on trial in the year 1960. No one ever dared touch this theme before. From Albert Zugsmith, producer of Touch of Evil and director of Sex Kittens Go to College, and featuring snappy musical numbers like College Confidential Ball and Playmates. And of course, is often the case when there's a campy title released, who's on the commentary but David Del Val. In this case, David Del Val and film historian archivist Stan Schaefer. So I'm excited to check out that commentary. But this one, I'm trying to think if it even ever had... It might have had a VHS, and it might have had eventually a MOD DVD, but I feel like it's been woefully underrepresented on home video, and so it's nice to get a new Blu-ray of it. I don't know. I just enjoy this kind of, again, sort of an idea of what's hip. Like it's a non-studio. Zugsmith is definitely, like, as much as he's working with studios, this is a non-studio kind of movie. I mean, it is, I think, a Universal movie ultimately, isn't it? So yeah. Universal International release, but it feels like something more independent. and Zugsmith's films often do. He did a movie called Confessions of an Opium Eater, which is the one I should have zeroed in on when I was talking about Joe Dante. Joe Dante loves Confessions of an Opium Eater. It's a movie starring Vincent Price, and it is very trippy and weird, and I theorize an influence on Big Trouble in Little China, but I couldn't say for sure. This movie is just kind of more fun. It's musical, it's goofy, and I don't know. I'm excited about it. Now I just need Hoot Nanny Hoot on Blu-ray, please. You have to look that one up. Okay, then we have a film noir Dark Side of Cinema collection. This is number 24. My goodness. There are a lot of these. Okay, so we got 3 movies here. We have The Crooked Circle, we have Jennifer, and we have Union Station. So let's go in chronological, I guess, order. 1957, 1953... 1950. Actually, we're going in reverse chronological. All right. So, The Crooked Circle. I think I've only heard of Union Station in terms of these 3. So, Crooked Circle, the thrilling battle for love and life between a two-fisted champ and the crooked underworld. In this smashing film noir, young Tom Kelly, John Smith, dives headfirst into the world of prize fighting, much to the chagrin of his ex-boxer brother, who is well aware of the criminal underbelly of the sport. An honest trainer, Robert Armstrong, handles the promising Tommy at first until corrupt forces conspire around him and push him toward betrayal. The young pugilist finds himself being squeezed on all sides to throw a fight until he punches back to expose the thuggish crime racket. Directed in widescreen by Republic Pictures' jack of all trades, Joseph Kane, and co-starring Faye Spain, Steve Brody, and Don Kelly. Definitely a low-budget production, clearly, but 2-3-5-1, so a widescreen noir, which is relatively rare, I think. This one sounds intriguing. It's got a commentary by film historian, screenwriter Gary Girani, who's always entertaining. A Republic Pictures movie, so there you go with the lower budget. But boxing, obviously a big part of the genre, big part of noir, comes up often. The setup is probably still one of the best, but that could be interesting. So then we have Jennifer, which I'm very much fascinated by because it stars Howard Duff and Ida Lupino. And I'm about to go off and see an Ida Lupino movie tonight, which I may have mentioned in another video because I'm recording a bunch on the same day. What was it that made Jennifer afraid of men? Film icon Ida Lupino stars as Agnes Langley, who gets a job through Jim Hollis, Howard Duff, of course, her husband. I don't know if he was at the time, but as caretaker of an old and vacated Southern California mansion. I like this setup. The owner's cousin Jennifer was the last occupant and has mysteriously disappeared. Agnes soon begins to believe that Jennifer was murdered and that Jim, with whom she has fallen in love, is responsible. The eerie noir mystery laced with gothic romance is highlighted by the atmospheric cinematography of James Wong Howe. Fantastic. One of the greats. And the introduction of the jazz standard Angel Eyes, composed and performed by Matt Dennis. This one I'm going to watch very soon. This sounds really, really interesting to me. Joel Newton is the director. I don't know Joel Newton. 1953. 73 minutes is a really good running time. Really easy to fit that in. And ever since Shakedown, I've been more into Howard Duff. So I'm very curious to see him play this role. Again, I know that they were married. Duff and Lupino were married, but I don't know when they got married. So anyway, Jennifer sounds fascinating. I'm very much into that. Commentary by Kat Ellinger and Martin Contario. And then Union Station, which is the one I've definitely heard of, from 1950, starring Bill Holden. And I'm trying to remember if I've seen this one. Tension that tightens with each passing moment in this tense and gritty crime thriller in the tradition of The Naked City. Screen great William Holden plays a railroad police chief in a race against time, trying to bring down a gang of kidnappers who are holding a blind heiress for $100,000 ransom, with Chicago's Union Station Terminal as the payoff location. The film crackles with melodrama and danger as police chase the gang leader, Lyle Becker, from his hideout to the station's underground tunnel for a bold and gripping climax. Nancy Olson from Sunset Boulevard, Barry Fitzgerald, and Jan Sterling also star in Union Station, directed by noir ace Rudolph Mattei, DOA, and adapted by Sidney Boehm. Black Tuesday, which is actually one of my favorite discoveries from one of these box sets of last year. The Eddie Robinson movie Black Tuesday was great. So same screenwriter as that. From Nightmare in Manhattan by Thomas Walsh. And this has an audio commentary by film historian, author Alan K. Rhodey, who is great and one of the pros on these tracks. So I'm excited about that too. But Jennifer, I'm actually going to pull out and set aside because I'm going to watch that very soon. Jumping forward, well, actually, let's not do that just yet. Let's save. I'm going to have some 4Ks towards the back, folks, so hang with me while I talk about some other stuff. We'll talk about The 10th Victim. This is a film from 1965. 2K restoration in its 21st century. It is the 21st century, and society's lust for violence is satisfied by the Big Hunt, an international game of legalized murder. Players are selected at random by a computer, and it is up to the hunter to get his victim, no matter what, and to do him in. The divine Ursula Andress, of course from the Bond movies, Dr. No, doing in her last victim with a cleverly conceited pair of pistols in her bra at a New York nightclub, and the dashing Marcello Mastroianni doing his last victim by attaching sticks of dynamite to the spurs of his victim. A rider in a horse show, have been matched up against each other by the computer. These adversaries are to confront each other in an arena of the Coliseum before the world's television cameras for the kill of the century. But they find that love is the most dangerous game of all. Directed by Elio Petri, investigation of a citizen above suspicion, and co-starring Elsa Martinelli, who's in Hatari, which I talked about recently. The 10th Victim is a murderous, groovy 60s cult classic whose wild action and sexy style have influenced a generation of movies, from The Running Man to Austin Powers. Yeah, I could see that. Weird side note, I remember Glenn Danzig of the Misfits, and of course his own fame, came into my video store circa 2000 when this came out on DVD via, I think, Anchor Bay, and I swear he bought this movie. And so I was like, oh, he's into some 60s cult stuff. That's cool. He had really good taste, by the way. Audio commentary by film historians Howard S. Berger, Steve Mitchell, and Nathaniel Thompson. Elio Petri, subject for further research. Featurette by Robert Licurgo with Paolo Peguararo Petri, wife of Elio Petri, and author, film historian Kim Newman in that featurette. Well, that's great. I'm down for that. Includes both Italian and English audio, Italian theatrical trailer. As I said, new 2K restoration by Studio Canal, so I'm sure this is going to look good. So that's The 10th Victim. Setting that aside as well for viewing purposes. Next we have The Glass Web. This one is from 1953. This is a 3D movie, one that is another collaboration between the 3D Film Archive and Kino Lorber. It's a wonderful collaboration that continues, that I love, because 3D Film Archive is fantastic, and all their 3D releases have been really great and look really good, and they really take care and time with the elements and making sure that the stereoscopic stuff lines up and looks cool. And I know it's harder to watch 3D movies now, but if you have the monitor to watch them, it is a great experience, I gotta say. I wish they hadn't made them so hard to get now, but I'm hoping they'll become more available at some point. Anyway, gorgeously remastered for the very first time in 3D by the 3D Film Archive, film noir legend Edward G. Robinson spins The Glass Web, the ultimate in shocking 3D suspense. Television writer John Forsythe has been having an affair with ice-cold actress Paula, Kathleen Hughes, while working on the weekly authentic TV show Crime of the Week. When Paula demands a ransom to keep the affair from Don's wife, Marsha Henderson, he agrees. However, as he arrives to deliver the money, he finds Paula dead. Soon the show's researcher Henry, that's Robinson, proposes that their next episode should reenact Paula's murder, and that he has incriminating evidence against Don. This twist-filled noir classic was filmed in 3 glorious dimensions by legendary director Jack Arnold, who I mentioned before, Creature from Black Lagoon, Incredible Shrinking Man. I love that Arnold did other 3D movies besides Creature. 1953, 81 minutes, 185. Yeah, I mean, this sounds great, and the 3D is always impeccable with 3D Film Archive. They do such a wonderful job. Yeah, it sounds like a cool film noir too, just honestly. And I love the gimmick added to what is already a cool story. So that's The Glass Web from 1953. Jumping, well, hold on. Let's keep in the 60s for a second here. That wasn't the 60s, obviously. This is from 1960. This is part of a group of Peter Sellers films that Kino's putting out. I didn't get all of them, but there are a lot of interesting ones. This one is called Two-Way Stretch. And again, 1960. In this caper comedy classic of 1960s British cinema, the great Peter Sellers stars as cocky criminal mastermind Dodger Lane, who has been concocting the perfect robbery in prison. With two cellmates, he intends to break out of jail, steal a fortune in diamonds from a rich Maharaja, and then break back in. He only has a few days left of his sentence to serve, and his alibi couldn't be any tighter. As long as the operation runs smoothly, what could possibly go wrong? Everything. In one of Sellers' funniest farces, packed with rib-tickling rogues, gallery of British comedy legends, Lionel Jeffries as the hilarious, humiliated prison officer, Wilfred Hyde White as a bogus vicar, David Lodge as the meat-headed muscle man, and Bernard Cribbins in the nice young man part, riotously directed by Robert Day. Audio commentary by authors and comedy historians Gemma Ross and Robert Ross. Very curious to hear that. But I do remember this being part of a series that Anchor Bay also put out of Peter Sellers films, a lot of which I was unaware of when these discs came out. And some of them have come to Blu-ray. Some of them are now part of this group of Peter Sellers movies. You want to look up at kinolorber.com to see all the rest of them that came out. But this was one of my favorites in that group. And I love the idea of breaking out of prison before you're about to get out so you can have an alibi to make a big robbery and have money when you get out. I think it's great. And Peter Sellers is great in it. So that is Two-Way Stretch. Okay, jumping ahead, we have from the 1980s, from 1984, we have Best Defense. This one was, and I think is interestingly, it's a Dudley Moore movie, right? But it says strategic guest star Eddie Murphy. And one thing I do remember about this movie, because I go pretty deep on 80s cinema, folks. I have an extensive Blu-ray collection of 80s movies. Not all of them gems, but I just think if you grew up when I did, the 80s movies were really formative, even if they weren't great. I'm just fascinated by the ones that seem forgotten. And this movie is definitely forgotten, maybe for a reason, but nonetheless. It seems like it's an Eddie Murphy vehicle, but what I do remember is that he is not that prominently featured in it. And so the idea of calling him a strategic guest star is an interesting idea. Brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the 35 original camera negative. If you're out to build the ultimate super tank super weapon and you find out Dudley Moore has something to do with the missile guidance system, you've got to be concerned. Then when you find out Eddie Murphy is going to test the tank in an actual combat situation, you ought to forget about it altogether. Luckily for us, government and Dynotechnics Incorporated don't know Moore and Murphy like we do, and both legendary actors are turned loose on a high-tech, hilarious adventure that sets modern warfare back a couple hundred years. Kate Capshaw co-stars in this madcap military farce from the filmmaking duo Willard Huck and Gloria Katz, who of course did Messiah of Evil and Howard the Duck, but they were the writers behind American Graffiti. Oh, gosh, I love Messiah of Evil so much. Anyway, so this has a commentary by screenwriter, producer Alan Spencer, and author film historian Justin Humphreys. I think I talked about them on the commentary. Shoot. There was Play Misty for Me was one, and then there was another they did that I really loved, and I'm blanking on what it is. But I am quickly becoming a fan of Alan Spencer, and I have been, and Justin Humphreys in commentaries. They just do a great job. Self-aware, humorous, informative, a great combination of all. I'm very curious to hear the commentary, mostly because I'm curious what the story is with this movie. Was there studio interference? What was the idea? And then what happened? And so this is definitely a story that I want to know, and I want to hear them tell it. So I can't wait to check it out. I'm just happy to have another addition to my 80s cinema collection, which, like I said, is quite vast. It's a whole group of films, and I'm always kind of looking for more, of the obscure stuff that we saw on the shelves of video stores. I think that's the other thing, that they were prominent on the shelves of video stores when I was a youngster, and so I just kind of want to recreate that. I kind of want to have everything that I can that was part of that landscape. I grew up in video stores in that time, and this was a movie that I saw in a lot of them because Eddie Murphy was huge at the time, as was Dudley Moore from Arthur and things on up. So definitely want to rewatch it. I don't remember loving it, but I'm definitely curious nonetheless. Okay, on to some 4Ks. We'll start with Daylight, the Stallone film, the sort of a disaster movie from 1996, part of that group of that resurgence of disaster films from the 1990s, which, come on, folks, let's bring it back. Let's jump back in. More disaster movies, please. Right now feels like a really good time, if you know what I mean. So this one, brand new HDR Dolby Vision Master from a 4K scan of 35 original camera negative. Brace yourself for the earth-shaking action and suspense. Screen legend Sylvester Stallone races against time to lead a group of stranded commuters out of a collapsed tunnel 100 feet below the Hudson River and safely back to daylight. This one is pretty harrowing stuff. When an explosion seals off a commuter tunnel, the survivors are faced with toxic fumes, fires, and impending collapse of the tunnel. Their only hope lies in the hands of Kit Latura, Stallone, a former emergency medical services chief who is haunted by a tragic past. As the walls cave in and the tunnel fills with water, Latura risks his own life to save others and prevent disaster from escalating into an even greater catastrophe. Amy Brenneman, Viggo Mortensen, Dana Dea, and J.O. Sanders star in this thrilling adventure from director Rob Cohen, who of course directed the first Fast and the Furious movie, among other things. Filled with spectacular effects and heart-pounding intensity, Daylight will have you holding your breath from start to finish. And this, of course, includes an audio commentary from director Rob Cohen, the making of Daylight, an EPK featurette as well. Whenever There Is Love, music video by Donna Summer and Bruce Roberts. I do like it when they include those. This, of course, has a Blu-ray and a 4K. And the Blu-ray looks good. However, I will say that the effects in this movie not done any favors by the high definition, I don't think. And the movie itself slightly less than I remembered. I was a big fan when it came out. I loved this whole resurgence, Volcano, Dante's Peak being one of the highlights for me. But yeah, this one didn't quite hold up as well as I'd hoped, but the presentation is nice, and obviously you've got some nice extras as well. So if you're a fan of this movie, you definitely want to pick up this 4K and add it to your Stallone collection, your disaster movie collection, what have you. But yeah, another 90s 4K disaster movie from Kino. Let's see here. Let's do some more 90s, and then we'll do that last. Okay, so another movie that I don't necessarily remember fondly is The General's Daughter, a John Travolta vehicle, also from 99. Sorry, not 96. This is a brand new HDR Dolby Vision Master from a 4K scan of the 35 camera negative. There's the right way, the wrong way, and the Army way, but there's no way military investigator Paul Brenner, that's John Travolta, is going to participate in a cover-up when Fort McCallum officials try to hide the motive behind the murder of a beautiful female officer. Travolta's magnetic performance sparks this riveting thriller from producer Mace Neufeld, The Hunt for Red October, director Simon West, who did Con Air, of course, and co-writer William Goldman, who did Marathon Man, All the President's Men, Princess Bride. Madeline Stowe plays Brenner's co-investigator in The Former Flame, while James Cromwell, Timothy Hutton, Clarence Williams III, and James Woods among the suspects in this steamy game of cat and mouse that will keep you guessing until the explosive finale. This has an audio commentary by director Simon West, The General's Daughter behind-the-scenes featurette, 4 deleted scenes including an alternate ending, which I remember being interesting, and it is a widescreen 2:3:5:1 movie from 1999. It's been a minute, so to be fair, I I've had a little bit going on in my life, and I haven't had a chance to rewatch this yet. So I'd kind of like to before I give my full commentary. But I do remember it maybe slightly rubbing me the wrong way when it came out in '99, and I remember that was a popular response to the film. But I am curious to rewatch it, especially with that cast and a sort of a whodunit, cat and mouse type thriller atmosphere. The late '90s thriller I found myself longing for a bit more these days, and so there's a chance I may appreciate it more now. And this is a Paramount transfer. I'm pretty sure it's going to look nice. But apologies, I haven't been able to check it out just yet. But yeah, very curious to rewatch The General's Daughter. Blu-ray and 4K, of course, included. Next up, we have Black Sheep, also from Paramount, from 1996. And this, of course, the sort of follow-up sister movie to Tommy Boy, which I will talk about relatively soon, as that's gotten a 4K steelbook from Paramount as well. So this is Black Sheep, and of course stars Chris Farley and David Spade. And it is directed by the great Penelope Spheris, who I'm a huge fan of. Did a lot of great cult movies. Brand new HDR Dolby Vision Master from a 4K scan of the 35 camera negative. Meet Mike Donnelly. That's Chris Farley. He's one lovable, hilarious accident waiting to happen, dedicated to helping his big brother, Al, Tim Matheson, win the race for the Washington state governor. He turns every opportunity for votes into an embarrassing disaster. Campaign aide and super slacker Steve Dodds, David Spade, volunteers to babysit Mike. Big mistake. When Mike discovers that the incumbent governor is a crook, he dives headfirst into a whole new level of well-intended destruction. Chris Farley and David Spade, the stars of Tommy Boy, once again show why they were the reigning comedy duo of the 90s. Directed by Penelope Spheris, Wayne's World, and co-starring Gary Busey, Black Sheep is a raucous crowd pleaser bubbling over with maximum energy, featuring an electrifying performance by Super Seattle band Mudhoney. Did not remember that. Audio commentary by director Penelope Spheris, moderated by film critic and author Simon Abrams. I very much want to hear that. But yeah, I remember this movie. I remember liking it, but being sort of favoring Tommy Boy, if I'm honest. But I always did like the chemistry and the comedic, interplay of Chris Farley and David Spade. Huge SNL fan from, the 90s and before, so it's hard for me not to have a nostalgic attachment to these two actors and what they did post their SNL years. But definitely want to rewatch this one for the Penelope Spheris of it as well. I want to hear that commentary. I enjoy her commentaries very much and her as a director. So that is Black Sheep on 4K. And then lastly we have, I love it when they do these. This is a Peril and Distress, double bill. Two terrifying thrillers by Sidney Galliat and Bert I. Gordon. And we have Endless Night, Agatha Christie's Endless Night, and Picture Mommy Dead. And these are both 4Ks. And in this case, they are both included on one 4K disc. So this does not have a Blu-ray component. This is only a 4K. And so that's a cool thing that they're doing. Obviously, it's neat to have two movies together in one, and I'll talk about that. This second P&D release, Peril and Distress, is a series they've been working on. Includes two more classic and terrifying thrillers: Endless Night, 1972, based on the terrifying suspense novel by Agatha Christie, the legendary writer of Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express. Endless Night stars Haley Mills as a wealthy heiress who moves into a magnificent dream house with her new husband, Hywell Bennett. But when murder begins to make itself at home, the stage is set for stunning climax that even hardcore Christie fans consider one of her darkest and most shocking twists ever. George Sanders, Britt Eklund, and Lois Maxwell co-star in this gripping psychological thriller, masterfully adapted and directed by Sidney Gilliat, and featuring a haunting score by the great Bernard Herrmann. I'm actually taking note of this one because it's one that's come out on Blu-ray from a couple different labels, including Indicator, and I've always meant to see it. I love Haley Mills from her Disney stuff on up, but I actually love her in a role like this that I have never seen this. and it's from the 70s, and that's something that's relevant right now to me. So anyway, Picture Mommy Dead, 1966, from cult filmmaker Bird Eye Gordon, the director of Food of the Gods and Empire of the Ants, comes this haunting thriller that will send chills down your spine after Edward Shelley's, that's Don Amici's, wealthy wife, Zsa Zsa Gabor, dies in a mysterious fire. He marries Francine, Martha Heyer, the governess of his daughter, Susan Gordon. Francine is only interested in Edward's money and wastes no time spending his inheritance. She then turns her attention to Susan. If Susan and Edward were both to die, the rest of the inheritance would go to Anthony, Maxwell Reed, Edward's cousin and Francie's former lover. Beautifully shot by Ellsworth Fredericks, who shot Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and co-starring Wendell Corey and Sini Hasso. So these both have commentaries. Audio commentary for Endless Night by film historians Howard S. Berger and Nathaniel Thompson, and audio commentary for Picture Mommy Dead by film historians Howard S. Berger and Nathaniel Thompson. So both of them on both tracks, but a cool double feature that I'm definitely setting aside to watch very soon. Anyway, that will do it for this round of Kino titles. Lots of stuff there to check out, lots to enjoy, and lots to intrigue you. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.